High up on the wall of the Bardi Chapel, in the church of Santa Croce in Florence, is a fresco by Giotto. It is one of 7 scenes from the life of St. Francis. This one shows the final confrontation between St. Francis and his father, who had taken his son to court to recover lost income, as St. Francis had been giving away the family firm's money to the church and to the poor. In response to his father's demand, St. Francis renounced his family and took off all his clothes, whereupon the Bishop of Assisi wrapped him in his cloak. This is the scene that Giotto has depicted, but has set it outside rather than within the court. It's not such a familiar story today, but the 14th century viewers would doubtless have known straight away what was going on. Perhaps the familiarity of the story and the unusual semicircular shape of the fresco panel encouraged Giotto to play around with the depiction of the incident, for he has set his viewers a puzzle. How are the figures in the painting arranged? Is everything visible to everybody? There are a number of ways that we can look at the event in the painting. We might see the figures arranged along the bottom like a frieze, with the 2 groups facing off in full sight of one another, like 2 gunfighters in a showdown. At the far end of each group is a child carrying a basket and having its hair pulled by an adult. Quite why, I don't know, but the pair creates a symmetry between the 2 sides in the dispute. St. Francis is not at the geometric centre of the painting, but reading the image this way implies some kind of balance between the 2 sides, almost a tug of war. However, this is not the only way the painting can be read. The Bishop of Assisi stands on the bottom step on the short side of the building. The other members of the clergy are behind him, so we could imagine them as standing against the wall and being out of sight of St. Francis's father and the group around him. In this reading, St. Francis stands almost naked and almost alone against the angry mob, increasing the sense of his vulnerability. There is also a third possibility, though this is fainter. If you look at the feet of the group around the angry father, it is possible to see the group as not parallel to the long side of the building, but arriving there obliquely. In this case, they create a wedge with its point at the corner of the building. This creates a sense of movement towards the right, which is halted by the corner and by St. Francis' upright pose. To the right of him, the figures then appear more stationary. Reading the image like this brings out the difference in character of the 2 groups. Where they had first seemed to be symmetrical and equal, they now appear like chalk and cheese. These differences matter because they are evidence that Giotto was aware of the difference between spatial cues in painting and spatial cues in everyday life. If we actually saw the scene that Giotto depicts, it would have to be one way or the other. But in painting, it can remain ambiguous. The crucial differences between spatial cues in painting and in ordinary life come from the flatness of the surface and the shape of the support, in this case, a semicircle. The shapes in the painting set up a relation with the shape of the support. This would happen whether the artist wanted it to or not. In this image, however, I think Giotto definitely wanted his viewers to notice the semicircle. Look, for instance, at the way the shape of the pink building is tailored to the curving frame of the fresco. Look again at those 2 poor children having their hair pulled. Giotto is drawing the viewer's attention to the shape. Semicircularity becomes part of the action. The semicircle is not a metaphor, but a frame. It is something complete, containing everything that is part of the story. No person or object goes beyond the edge of the frame. The viewer of the painting does not and cannot look at the scene in the way a viewer standing in the piazza would have done. The ambiguous spatial relations are not an added difficulty, but are there to help the viewer think through the story, how events appear differently to different people, and to reflect, in an even more fundamental way, on how we come to see one thing as being in front of, or behind, or next to another, in painting and in ordinary life. If you found this video interesting, please like and subscribe or visit my channel. Think of a Picture, where you'll find lots more short, thought-provoking videos. Thank you.